Imagine a marketplace where brands connect with talent and you find the ideal project. Go! Welcome to Fuse, the 15-minute communication, PR and marketing podcast from PRCA. My name's Dan Gold and I'm joined by my co-presenter Aisha Lett. Hello Aisha.
Hi Dan.
So you had the opportunity to connect with Lara Vandenberg about Publicis, which we'll hear about shortly. But in the discussion, was there anything that stood out to you that was really interesting?
Absolutely. The one thing that stood out for me in the conversation with Lara was about the future of the comms professional and where we, yes, I have to say we, will fit into the newly created world of work since the pandemic and all the changes that it brought about. But rather than me telling you about it, here is Lara explaining what Publicist is.
Publicist is an online platform and we connect brands and agencies to source, hire, pay marketing contractors, advisors, full-time. So we're really a facilitator of talent.
COVID-19 is still very much top of mind. It's a pandemic. It's 3 years, but we really hoped it would have gone somewhere by now, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Tell me from your perspective, from where you sit, how do you see the pandemic having affected your field and your area? What challenges have you had and what opportunities as well?
So we launched Publicist in May of 2020, and so we've never known this business outside a pandemic, which was a very interesting time to start a company. What we have done and what we've seen over the last 2 years is companies are downsizing their core teams and they're really relying on outsourcing fractional workers, freelance workers, and I think it goes both ways. And so the Great Resignation has allowed talent to take a step back and actually decide what they value and where they want to work and what standards they want to uphold their employers to. And so I think what's been really interesting is some of the trends we've seen. We see this huge demand for temp to perm. So both agencies and companies hiring fractional workers at 40 hours a week for 3 to 6 months. And then it's almost like dating before you get married, right? Yeah. You want to decide that it's a good fit, not just, and I think, pre-pandemic, we saw that the power was held from the employer. But I think that one of the great trends we've seen in the pandemic is that talent holds the power and they can uphold the people they're working for to the standards that they've now decided that, I value X and I want to contribute to Y mission. And so that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen.
We spoke about the challenges. What are some of the opportunities you see and the future, or the future of almost like remote work, we could say?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts here. And so one is this concept of hyper-specialization. And I think what's really interesting about the communications and marketing category is it is growing both vertically and horizontally. And what I mean by that is industries are growing from, the emerging fintech avenues to different lanes in healthcare. And I think the skill sets are growing as well. And so, there are things like go-to-market specialists for crypto coins or, we've seen recently, PR specialists for vaccines is a huge, trend that we've seen. And I think what is an opportunity is it allows for people to be hyper specialists in lanes. And so 10 years ago, I think that people were often hiring for generalists, but now hyper specialization is a huge trend and everyone is a specialist. An obvious one is remote work and the ability to, be a solopreneur and run your back office remotely from, you're from Barbados, I'm in Puerto Rico right now. And I think that, a few years ago, had you said that to people, they never would have believed anyone.
Yes, you're right. Years ago, we would have had to fly. We'd either have to meet, I come there or you come here, or we meet in some fantastic middle ground and have a face-to-face. But now virtual and technology has taken over everything. Do you see technology and or dependent use of technology as we move to remote work, as we move to remote meetings and hiring and things like that? Where do you see technology fitting in, and would you offer the advice to young folks coming up to have technology and be very adept with technology as part of their skill set? You're no longer just a comms person or HR person or a PR person.
I think absolutely, and I think that the Gen Z and millennials or younger millennials were absolutely born into this generation of technology. So I do think so. And particularly as it pertains to these solopreneurs and these freelancers, I think the amazing thing about technology has allowed so many people to go from full-time to, these solopreneurs or these businesses of one. And what I mean by that is, again, 5-10 years ago, it was really hard to start your own business. And I think with workflow tools, like we have on the platform, we're allowing for talent to pitch on new business. We're allowing them to have their back office on platform. So things like sending invoices, contracts, tax forms. I think the barrier to entry for freelancers used to be a lot harder than it is now. But with platforms and with technology, it's an easier barrier to entry, that's for sure.
And that actually makes a lot of sense. And I think that with the pandemic and with the move to remote work, even here in Barbados, we were one of the countries that had a welcome visa stamp for folks to come. I think it was about 12 to 18 months. And, you can work remotely from here. Solid Wi-Fi, good weather. You're in Puerto Rico, so good weather, and just the ability to decompress and to take a mental break while still working. Years ago, that would have been unheard of, but now I think the technology and the way countries have adapted to the pandemic really offers a lot more opportunities for people coming in. You said you started your business during the pandemic, but it has evolved. Between 2020 and 2022, things have changed dramatically. We've got vaccines now. Like you said, countries are evolving their travel protocols and their entry requirements. How do you see your business growing and staying relevant, whether the pandemic finishes, and fingers crossed it finishes real soon, or if it drags on for a few more years? How are you going to stay in the game?
Yeah, so our mission is to really empower marketers and communications professionals, allowing them creative and economic opportunities. And one of the really interesting things on platform that we're seeing right now is every time a client posts a project, we allow them to either opt in for that person to be remote or not remote, remote or in person rather. Over 95% of projects are remote. They really don't care where people are. They're really focused on the talent. And so to answer your question on how we will continue to evolve, right now we are in the US, the UK, and Australia. We will go region by region. We will continue to roll out workflow tools, both for supply, so the marketers and the communications professionals on platform so they can really do all of their business, and then for a suite of workflow tools as we particularly start to sell into more and more enterprises.
So it seems like you really have a solid plan and a business, because so many businesses also started in the pandemic, but we've seen quite a few of them lose relevance and not being able to pivot, as things have changed, because the pandemic has changed.
Yeah, and look, one of the things that when we launched, our immediate need was freelance and fractional talent. That was the platform that we launched. But as we've seen, and to your point about companies bouncing back, we're now doing full-time, we're now doing advisory. So really any kind of talent persona from freelance, fractional, advisory, full-time, we have available, just because that is, people are going back to wanting to hire people full-time as well.
What is the greatest lesson that you have learned as a new company who has boomed and expanded within the pandemic? What have you learned, and what advice would you give to folks out there listening in?
I think the greatest thing I've learned as, we launched a startup in the pandemic is hiring, much smarter people than you to really own things. I think, a lot of people are bootstrapping. We have raised 2 rounds of funding now, and we won't stop there. So I think really hiring, whether it's, you can't be good at it. You can't be good at everything, right? So you need to really find what your superpower is and then delegate what you're not good at, because you can't be good at everything. And so I think, that's probably my piece of advice, is to hire much smarter people than you are and delegate where you can.
Okay, thank you, Lara. It was so great chatting with you and for sharing your experiences and your knowledge to all the folks listening to Fuse. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be here.
A big thank you to Lara Vandenberg for joining us on this episode. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Fuse from PRCA. Please do share this with your colleagues and friends, whether they're in marketing, public relations, or communications. You can always point them to our website at prca.org.uk/Fuse.